Evolutionists are so afraid of having their dogma challenged that they'll ruin the lives of anyone who opposes it. Nowhere else is that so obvious than in our colleges and universities. In 2007, Dr. Robert Marks at Baylor University had published work with William Dembski which clearly showed that the dynamics of information and biological structures requires an intelligence in his personal website. When the Baylor University Evolutionary Informatics Lab found out about it, they had his website shut down. Also in 2007, despite a record of peer-reviewed publication that more than quadrupled university standards, Guillermo Gonzalez was denied tenure at Iowa State University simply because of his beliefs in intelligent design. Dr. Michael Egnor, who's been professor at the Department of Neurological Surgery at Stony Brook University since 1991, was shocked by the savagery with which he was attacked after he simply told students that evolution was irrelevant to medicine. So what makes these supposed houses of enlightenment so afraid of being challenged that they'll viciously attack anyone who challenges their materialistic worldview? I had to investigate. Dr. Robert Jackson Marks is no joke. He is an electrical engineer. His contributions to signal processing, sampling theory, and the field of computational intelligence are as undeniable as they are extremely technical. The result of some of his work is used in targeting optimal doses of radiation for cancer treatments, but being fixated on information and probabilities, his work is much more far-reaching. He took a position as professor at Baylor University in 2003. In 2006, Marks secretly hired William Dembski to work part-time with him as a postdoctoral researcher. The secrecy was because Dembski had been involved in a controversy in 2000 that left him at odds with the university. Instead of securing grants through the university's academic grant administration, Marks funded Dembski's salary through the development administration with a gift donation from the LifeWorks Foundation in Washington State, whose president, Brendan Dixon, worked with the Biologic Institute based at the Discovery Institute in Seattle, a creationist think tank to whom he had donated over $700,000 for that year. I covered Dembski's concepts of specified complexity, as well as the mathematic and scientific reasons it's severely flawed and inapplicable in episode 97, Specified Complexity. The ruse kept the university unaware of Dembski's work until July 20th, 2007, when Marks appeared on a podcast called ID the Future, hosted by Casey Luskin of the Discovery Institute. In the interview, Marks described work that he and Dembski were doing and stated that it was being conducted in the Evolutionary Informatics Lab at Baylor University. This brought Dembski's presence to the attention of the university, who found that Dr. Marks' webpage on the university's server stated the exact same thing. It was at this point that the university terminated William Dembski's position and refunded the unspent portion to the LifeWorks Foundation in Washington. All of the work associated with William Dembski was subsequently removed from the university's server and was reposted by Dr. Marks on his own website, where it is still available to this day. For Dr. Marks, however, a different fate awaited. After all of this, the university continued to employ Dr. Marks and does so to this day. In fact, as of this upload, the university has even allowed Dr. Marks to post about his own creationist publications in his curriculum vitae hosted on the university server. It's very hard to see where Dr. Marks has been squelched. In 2005, Professors James Colbert and Hector Avalos and Assistant Professor Michael Clough submitted 3 petitions signed by professors in the Science and Technology Centers of Iowa State University, University of Northern Iowa, and the University of Iowa, each one calling for a ban of the teaching of intelligent design as science at the university level. The petition was in response to a class titled God and Science being taught for several years on the campus forwarding intelligent design as science at Iowa State by Thomas Ingebrigtsen. The team secured 400 signatures, the class was altered, and Ingebrigtsen is still gainfully employed at the university as of this upload, a full decade and a half later. 2 years after the petitions were submitted, an assistant professor at Iowa State, astrophysicist Guillermo Gonzalez, was denied tenure. He had been a fellow at the Discovery Institute, which had already been focused on the university since the petition against Ingebrigtsen. They took exception when the university cited that Gonzalez had not lived up to the university's minimum standards of excellence. The Discovery Institute immediately responded by publicly citing Gonzalez's accomplishments: 68 peer-reviewed scientific articles versus the standard of only 15, being asked to serve as a referee for a number of leading peer-reviewed scientific publications, the fact that his research research has been featured in Science, Nature, and on the cover of Scientific American, a college-level astronomy textbook published by the Cambridge University Press, the spearheading of research that led to the discovery of 2 new planets, and roughly $200,000 in outside grant money for the university. When Gonzalez was first hired at Iowa State, he certainly did have an exemplary record of publication and research over 42 peer-reviewed papers. Contrary to the Discovery Institute's claim, there is no minimum standard for the amount of publication a faculty member produces. The criteria fixate more on the influence of a staff member's work over the time of their employ at the university, as well as their foreseeable future influence. Of Gonzalez's 26 papers published while at Iowa State, 20 of them were published within a year of being hired. After that, his publication record was 6 papers over the next 5 years. As far as the influence of Gonzalez's work, his work from before his time at the university was certainly cited regularly to some small degree of national attention, including popular science magazines, but his work at the university was mostly review articles and not the actual research that he was hired to do. It is simply a reality that he did not further any scientific knowledge of exoplanets in any significant way over his time there. This is also why the university was nonplussed by the textbook publication and any refereeing for journals that he had done, as it was all reviews of other people's work, not his own and not that of anyone else on campus. The claim that Gonzalez's research led to the discovery of 2 new planets is hard to corroborate. While the claim is repeated ubiquitously amongst creationist apologists, the only mention of any new discovery of planets in association with Gonzalez that I could find was a reprint of a 1999 article from the Jerusalem Post discussing the discovery of 2 new exoplanets. Gonzalez was mentioned at the end of the article discussing the correlation between stars containing heavier elements and the distribution of gas giant planets. This could be a criteria that was used in discovering the planets, but no mention is made of his involvement with the discovery, so if this is the discovery that is being touted, it is unclear how his work led to it, but more importantly, this occurred 2 years before his time at Iowa State. Over the course of his 6 years at Iowa State, Gonzalez was able to secure a little over $175,000 in outside grant money to fund his research, including a $50,000 grant from the Discovery Center. Comparing this to the departmental average of $1.3 million in secured grants, Gonzalez's figure isn't very impressive. Additionally, in his entire time at the university, only 1 of his students had successfully graduated. According to the labor advocate site Glassdoor, the average salary of an assistant professor at Iowa State University is roughly $90,000 per year, but the minimum salary is roughly $59,000. The unfortunate fact is that, at best, during his time at Iowa State University, Gonzalez cost the university at least $360,000 while bringing in less than $200,000, providing virtually no new research, and with only 1 graduating student to show for it. Despite his record before joining the campus, his work at Iowa State simply wasn't a solid investment for the university. Complicating this, the Discovery Institute began a campaign associating Gonzalez not making tenure with the petition that had been circulated 2 years prior, claiming that Gonzalez was the only well-known creationist on the campus and therefore the obvious target of the petitions. This was a curious assertion considering that the Discovery Institute had already covered the Ingebrigtsen case fairly heavily. This was made even more absurd by the fact that all 3 petitions had been circulated since 2000, 1 full year before Gonzalez was hired by the university. Gonzalez went on to another assistant professorship at Grove City College and eventually a full professorship at Ball University. In June of 2019, Gonzalez took on a research position at the Center for Applied Optics at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and as of this upload, he is still employed there and he is actually conducting scientific research. Michael Egnor is no joke, having performed landmark brain surgery on a child who had been run over by a parent's SUV. In 1991, Dr. Egnor took on a professorship of neurological surgery and pediatrics at Stony Brook University in New York. 16 years later, the Alliance for Science held an essay contest on the topic, "Why I Would Want My Doctor to Have Studied Evolution." In response, Egnor published an essay on the Discovery Institute's blog stating that evolution was irrelevant to medicine. In the 2008 film Expelled No Intelligence Allowed, Egnor described the response from academia as vicious and base. As Ben Stein posited,
the Darwinists were quick to try and exterminate this new threat.
It's hard to substantiate this claim, however, as according to the Stony Brook University website, Egnor is now the director of pediatric neurosurgery at the university over a decade later. The word exterminate seems to be a little harsh. The base and vicious attacks that Dr. Egnor describes seem to be limited to online trolling. The National Center for Science Education speculates that perhaps it was just Egnor's first day on the internet. Once again, we have three scientists with excellent records in academia. Once again, we have three scientists with views that are askew of the scientific consensus. What we don't have are examples of anyone being squelched. Marx and Egnor are both still gainfully employed by the same institutions that supposedly squelched them. Gonzalez's termination can be substantiated through a very simple look at his lack of production after his first year at the university. And still, he has remained gainfully employed. These charges of academic squelching are simply unsubstantiated. Investigating the particulars of these claims, however, is another example of how creationism taught me real science. If there's a creationist argument you think I should investigate, please comment below. It may become the basis for a future episode. In the meantime, subscribe and make sure you don't miss it.